Well, my vocation story is a bit of a surprise because I didn't ever really want to be a priest when I was younger. I always wanted to study medicine, and I took all the science subjects at school. And I suppose things began to change in my life when I was in my late teens, and I think I would describe it as a kind of a spiritual awakening, and then began to think more philosophically about life. You know, not just healing life, healing people's bodies, but what was the point of life? Where does it come from? Where does it go? How do you heal someone's soul? And that might sound very deep for a teenager, and it wasn't really. I went on that journey, and that led me to seminary. My brother was already there in training, Father Patrick Sheehan, and I then switched from sciences to the study of philosophy, psychology, and theology came after that. And I must say, I loved those years. Those subjects blew my mind. There was a whole intellectual tradition of the church that really opened my mind just to bigger questions in a bigger world. So I went to Queen's University and I studied philosophy and psychology there. Then I went down to Maynooth College where I studied theology, down there for a number of years. And then as a young seminarian, I heard said recently, it's good to open your mind to God, and then some point you have to open your heart. And that was the hard point. That's when the discernment had to come, because if you're going to be committed to Him in priesthood, you have to give Him your heart. And that's hard to do because you're not sure what He's going to do with it. So I think there came a point at the end of my studies, there was a natural progression to go into priesthood at that point, but I knew if I was going to take that step, I had to give Him my heart, and I did. And part of that is falling in love with God, if that doesn't sound corny, because if there's no love in it, it doesn't set you on fire, and it won't touch other people's lives. And I remember saying my first Mass, singing parts of it, because I love music as well, and I would chant some of the prayers of the Mass. And I remember when I finished my first Mass that day, I just knew deep down, I thought, this is what I meant to do the rest of my life, and this is what God has called me to do. Now, it's a bit like marriage. A wise priest once said, the reason you become a priest is not the reason you stay one. Like marriage, the reason you get married is not the reason you stay married. And the journey after that was a deepening of faith, the challenge of service that comes with life, discovering that the church isn't perfect and neither are people, coming across brokenness in all kinds of people's lives and trying to bring the healing presence of Christ there. And then there comes a time in your own life, which had happened when my mother was killed by a joyrider about 17 years ago, when brokenness comes to your own life. And you have to deal with those questions of healing, forgiveness, anger, rage. And looking back on that, I couldn't have got through all of that if I hadn't have had a deep relationship with Christ, who of course went through all those things himself in his own life. So I think that was my journey to priesthood. But I still regard myself on a constant journey to priesthood.